So the OnePlus 5T unboxing is here, but unofficially because apparently it wasn't supposed to come out just yet. Somehow that happened anyways. The iPhone Face ID supposedly has been hacked by a team of hackers, that's what they call themselves, or what they're referring to these people as, on somewhere on the other side of the world. And should you or should you not upgrade to 11.1.1? Well, we'll talk about that today, right after this. Hey, it's Mike from Go Cell Phone Repair, and if you're just jumping on over here on this side, we have kind of an alternating list of topics here so you can get an idea of what is on the agenda for today, but this is kind of an open forum, and that's why I went with the live stream format so that we can all interact, and if people have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat, and I will try to address each and every one of those at some point. I try to save that towards the end so that we can just kind of move through this for anyone who's watching the replay. Now, of course, if you're watching this live, well, it's a lot more fun. And I got a few changes that are going to be coming up to announce, and just a lot of crazy stuff that's been happening, and it's getting very difficult to fit this into a 1-hour format, so that's probably going to be changing. On top of that, this last Saturday, I did a live stream on another channel, and I'll put the link down in the video description so that you can check that out. It was a lot of fun. I really had no idea what to expect, but I am seeing that, you know, kind of the idea I had of bringing a panel of guests onto this live stream is almost definitely going to work the way that I was hoping it would. I thought we might have some restrictions kind of based on bandwidth and what Google Hangouts is capable of doing, but the whole thing turned out pretty well, so I am looking forward to do that soon, in addition to adding some new time slots, because obviously Monday afternoon isn't the most convenient time of the week, I know, for people to jump on here. So for those of you who are watching this after it's been published, I will have an alternative and, you know, some different coverage, some different stories that we can talk about later in the week, because things happen so fast around here. But I wanted to start off with this one. There's an article, and again, I will have links to this stuff, so if you want to see the details and the sources and where this all this stuff is available and where it came from, I'll put that down in the video description. So the OnePlus 5T unboxing video supposedly was published when it wasn't supposed to be. So the person who did the video apparently pulled it down, but now there's a copy out there. And you know, this is kind of how things work with the internet. Once something is released, you can't really take it back. You know, if there's a really bad picture or video or statement or anything on the web, it's pretty much for good. You know, it's not like you can go back and erase every trace of it from everywhere. So whether or not this was intentional, I always question, because, you know, a lot of companies like to present things as, oops, you know, that slipped out, it wasn't supposed to, where, you know, really the whole idea was to kind of create some buzz around their product. And we know quite a few brands that do that on a regular basis. So maybe this was an accident, maybe it wasn't, but either way, I'll put that link down the bottom. And if you want to get a look at the OnePlus 5T, which I'm kind of excited about, even though I don't have experience with that particular line of phones, I'm just happy to see anything enter the competitive phone arena, you know, so that we always have plenty of choices and we always have an incentive for manufacturers to try to improve their products and give people what it is that they're looking for. Because obviously, if we reduce this to a monopoly or a duopoly of sorts where there's only two companies that compete, well, it's choice A and choice B, and then that's often not going to be the right choice for everyone. So I actually have this article here, and I'm going to pull it up real quick so I can give you a few more details on it in a second, if this thing is going to cooperate with me. Here we go. So on the 5T, it was apparently well ahead, and by the way, that's supposed to be out on the 16th, and it came out somewhat ahead of time. And what is this gentleman's name? There's it's actually on Daily Motion now, where you can see the video, and it doesn't say a whole lot about the specs. It just kind of shows you what it's going to look like. And it's a pretty short video. It's like 5 minutes long. So again, if you want to check it out, I'm actually on bgr.com, and when that link comes up at the end of the video, you'll be able to check that out for yourself. And then tell me what you think. You know, I'm really interested, and I obviously can't go out and buy every single phone that is released as much as I would like to. I mean, they could always send them to me for a review, but that doesn't always happen. So it will be really cool to hear from someone who's actually using these phones when they're released. You know, we see review videos, but I suspect that in many cases there is a certain level of bias based on who's creating the video and whether or not they receive some sort of promotional merchandise in that process. You'd hope that people would stay objective, but I think all of us are slightly biased, one way or another towards a certain operating system or a certain form factor or features that are built into the phone. And of course, that's all what part of, makes the package, what it is that you're looking at a phone and how it works for you. And we had a very in-depth discussion on this other live stream that brought up a lot of questions that and topics that I've wanted to address for a long time. And that is just kind of the subjectivity that we have as consumers. We get used to something, and that's probably one of the major buying decisions, or one of the major factors when it comes to a buying decision. When I see people come into the store and they want to buy a phone, they tend to lean towards what they know. So that doesn't always indicate that the phone that they're looking at is the best option, but it's obviously the one that they're used to and they understand. And the ease of use definitely counts for something. But when you see people kind of getting ready to make that jump, should I try an iPhone or should I try an Android? Usually because they have some sort of frustration with the model that they're using at that point in time. I'm always hesitant to steer them away, as much as I would like to say, hey, you should try something different. The real question is, you don't want that customer to be unhappy with you because you made a recommendation. Even though it might be the best one, there's always going to be that big jump from, okay, I'm used to this and now I'm getting into a different operating system. And if I don't like it, I'm probably going to come back to the place that I bought it from and complain about it, and that's really unavoidable, unfortunately. It would be nice if we could all just kind of try both and, give them equal time and invest whatever it is that's going to be required to get over that learning curve initially. But that is often not the case, unfortunately. The Pixel 2 apparently is having some problems as well, so it's not just the iPhone X, and I keep trying to look for articles that are not centered on the iPhone X, but obviously that's kind of dominating the news and media at the moment. But there are some other things going on out there, and one of them is that apparently the Google Pixel had some problems with the color on the screens initially, and now they're saying that they're finding some dead spots on the screen. So around the edges, the bottom right hand side, users are saying that they're having trouble operating their phone. Certain areas on the digitizer are not responding. And what I'm not really understanding is that Google is saying that they will issue an update to fix the unresponsive spots on the Pixel 2 XL's touchscreen. Now, if you haven't already heard, there are also apparently some issues with the iPhone X performing in cold weather conditions and also becoming responsive. And what I'm really wondering and just trying to comprehend is how a software update would overcome a problem that seems to be based in hardware. If you have a dead spot on your touchscreen and it's a physical problem, or there's something in the electronics that's causing that not to respond the way that it's supposed to, I'm having a tough time understanding how a software upgrade would fix that. Let's say your charge port is damaged and it doesn't charge your phone anymore. You can't create any sort of software update that's going to fix that problem. So, hopefully for Google and for Apple, these problems will be resolvable somehow, and maybe there is something in the software that's causing the problem, but it just, from what I know about phones, it seems unlikely that dead spots on the screen would be something you could remedy with a software update. Maybe you can, I don't know. Hopefully for them, and it really sucks if you invest a sizable amount of money into a phone and a couple weeks later you end up having these kind of problems. And we see this over and over, and this is one of the reasons I'm always very hesitant to jump into a new form factor. You come out with one model of phone, and usually the following year you'll see the improvements and the bugs are fixed and all the things that were wrong with it have been removed. And we've had this happen historically, and it's almost every single new form factor that comes out from Apple will have some challenges initially. Sometimes they're not that serious, and sometimes it's something that is really a deal breaker for people. So, myself, I would like to wait for the iPhone X or the iPhone X, see, I'm saying it again, the iPhone XS to come out, because every even number generation, if you want to call it that, or odd number, depending on how you look at it, every new form factor that Apple tends to release, and this is true for other companies, there tends to be a few bugs in there that need to be worked out. And nobody really, as much as we want to have the newest technology available, no one really wants to buy into something that's going to be a headache, obviously. And I think that goes without saying, but it really makes me question, how this software update is going to address that. Maybe there's something that I'm just not getting here, but hopefully for them that will fix the problem, because if it doesn't and we end up seeing something like a recall of sorts, you know, where you have to basically get another phone, that is not going to be much fun for anyone. Hey, so Harvey, Kevin, how are you doing? Good to see you on here. I am going to run through these articles real quick and then jump over to the chat. So people are starting to enter the chat, and I want you to know I see you. But I'm going to leave this video up for other people to watch. So I want to go through all the information first and then come back to the chat. So hopefully you'll hang out with me for a little while. I definitely want to interact with people here. That is my sole intention. Well, one of my main intentions. What is going to happen to the unsold Snapchat spectacles? So I want to say it's like a year ago. You all know the story of Google Glass. It was ahead of its time. It got a very negative reaction from a lot of people in public who didn't like the idea of being, either photographed or recorded or who knows what else, out in public, walking around with people having these things attached to their faces. So that kind of just went silent. We don't see it anymore. And then this up-and-comer, which, these guys have blown up, Snapchat is huge, they decided they were going to put their own spin on it and design something sort of similar to Google Glass, but a little different. They wanted to go stylish with it, make it look a lot better, and put that out there in the public and see if they couldn't get this thing to catch on, where people put on glasses and you can take pictures and you can take short videos and so forth. Well, long story short, it looks like they did not do too well. So apparently Snap is stuck with a bunch of these spectacles, and I actually had the figure here. Let me pull this up real quick when my computer starts cooperating with me. So we have a 39, this is what they're saying. This is on theatlantic.com. Apparently a $39.9 million worth of excess inventory reserves and inventory purchase commitment cancellation charges. So they went big on these things, and it looks like they were going to go for or currently $129.99. So the price point isn't really prohibitive, I don't think, for what you're getting, and yet they're stuck with close to $40 million worth of excess inventory. Now what's going to happen with that? I would assume they're going to figure out a way to use that as a promotion. If you can't make money on it, you can at least figure out a way to promote your company or your brand name. So maybe getting close to Christmas, we'll see a special on the Snapchat spectacles. I have a hard time saying those two words together. Try that 10 times fast. But if you've been holding out and thinking about getting a pair of the spectacles, you might get a really good deal on them very soon, because apparently Snap is stuck with them and no telling what they're going to do. Obviously, for everything I know about that company, it sounds like they're doing pretty well, but that was a bad call on their part, unfortunately. Now, I want to clarify something from last week. I made a statement, and it wasn't exactly the way that it should have been. So I want to clear that up real quick and make sure we're all on the same page as far as that goes. So the iPhone screen replacement costs with and without Apple Care, I think something that a lot of people are probably wanting to know about. Well, if we take a look at the Apple website, they're saying that if you get Apple Care on the iPhone 10, that's $199 to one-time charge when you get the phone. If you break your screen, $29, and if I understand this correctly, you can use that twice a year. So $29 gets you a replacement screen. If it's not considered in warranty, and this is the one that I'm so without Apple Care, $279, pretty big jump there, right? Now, here's the other thing. If you have Apple Care, and I think we need to go to this screen here. If you have Apple Care and you break something other than your screen, it is not going to be $549. $549 is going to be the cost, let's say, should you break the back panel on your iPhone 10 if you don't have Apple Care. So if you have Apple Care, you are paying $199 up front and then $99 for each occurrence of damage outside of replacement screen. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, there's the screenshot. If you go to the Apple website, obviously you can get all of this clarified, hopefully clear as mud. But the thing that it really comes down to is that when you buy the phone, if you're buying the $1,000 phone and you buy the $200 worth of Apple Care and you break your screen, you pay a $99 deductible. So all in all, iPhone 10, Broken screen, repaired, total cost somewhere around $1,300. And then, of course, another $100 for the second time. And my understanding is that you can use that twice, and then I don't know what they tell you from there, find another alternative. Now, the interesting thing about this that happens every time a new phone comes out is that for the first few weeks or the first month or so, if you take that phone in to get a replacement, they really don't have any refurbished units. So I encourage people, if you buy an iPhone 10, you break it the first week, take it to Apple, you're almost definitely going to get a brand new replacement phone. So obviously back up your information if you can, get it on iTunes, get it on iCloud or whatever. But if you've had your phone for a good month or two, there will be refurbished units. So often when you take your phone in for warranty or not, if you're getting a replacement unit, although it is presented as a new phone, that will often mean it is new to you. And that means even if it comes in a brand new sealed box, it does not mean that you're getting a brand new phone. So this is something to be aware of, and something that I encourage people to ask these questions and read the fine print when you make a warranty claim. Am I getting a brand new, never used before phone, or am I getting a refurbished model? That can be the difference, a decision-making difference there. If you know that, hey, my phone has one minor damage, part that's damaged on it, but everything else is perfect. Do I want to take the risk of getting a refurbished unit? Have I been able to back up my data? Because if not, you're not going to get it back off the phone. And if that's important to you, you need to find another option, such as a third-party repair shop that can at least extract your data from the phone before you turn it over to the company that you got it from. And generally, when we send things into manufacturers, this isn't across the board, but oftentimes you'll either have a completely replaced logic board or they will wipe the data off of the phone. So a lot of times what you're getting back is not going to be the stuff that's really valuable and important to people. And I've had a lot of customers come in who really didn't realize that up front. And I think it's the responsibility, or at least there's an obligation to the person who's selling that phone or who manufactured that phone and is processing that warranty claim to tell you you're not getting your information back when this phone is replaced, and it's not automatically always going to be backed up. And again, to a lot of people, that makes a big difference. Now, with that said, here's an interesting one. According to the Motley Fool, there's a lot of buzz about Apple looking at something beyond phones. And they talked about how the iPod really, changed the game. Because at one point, Apple was selling computers. They weren't selling a ton of computers. But when the iPod first came out, that just took them from here up to here, because that's what people were interested in, was a portable device, something that they could carry around with them. And obviously since then, the iPhones have surpassed the iPod sales, by hundreds, thousands of times, right? And, for the most part, you don't see iPods too much anymore. Well, Apple is saying that there's another big step that's going to happen, and that step is going to be the next product that is going to eclipse even phones. Now, what could that be? Well, in this article, they talk about augmented reality. And it's funny because, again, during this live stream that we did on Saturday night, we were kind of saying, we've got all this great technology. We've got cameras that are just amazing. We've got, your emails and your text and your gaming and anything you can possibly think of in the palm of your hand. So what is the next step? Technology doesn't come to a standstill. We don't just say, well, we've all got phones, everybody's happy. Eventually we've got to go to the next level. So what is that next level? And my prediction was that in some big way, we will start seeing artificial intelligence integrated more into these devices that we're using. And obviously we've seen augmented reality already on the iPhone 10 and on other models of phones. But what Apple's saying is that they, according to this article, is that what they're aiming towards is a fully wearable version of this augmented reality where you actually put on your phone or whatever this device is going to be onto your head. So this will be interesting, and it's really seems to be the next logical step. I mean, if you're ready to plug into the Matrix, which is what it sounds like it's going to be in 2020 or sometime around then, we're getting very close to that. And in fact, if you listen to my podcast, a few months ago, we had a statement from the person who basically invented the first cell phone. So he's with Motorola. He came up with the very first portable cell phone, the old brick phone that people carried around. And this is his prediction. Within the last 12 months or so, he said that the next step is integrating phones into the human body somehow. Integrating these devices, I guess, whether we wear them or they're actually implanted or whatever it is. But imagine your phone becoming part of your body. So you're no longer carrying this thing in your hand. It's no longer in your pocket. Either you're going to wear it or it's actually going to be part of what makes us what we are, which is kind of crazy. Hopefully it'll be optional, and you can turn that thing off or remove it when you want to. Obviously there will be some cool things that we'll be able to do at that point, but beyond that, it seems pretty crazy if you ask me. Okay, so I think we've got one more on the list here, and that is the Genius bars apparently are getting overloaded, and we kind of have seen this. We've seen it happening over time, pretty much since Apple opened up their doors, and that is when you want service, you don't really just walk in and get helped right away all the time. In many cases, you've got to make an appointment up front. You've got to wait for them. You've got to, go through a process basically to get into the store and get your problem taken care of. And obviously, if there's not a store near you, that really doesn't work for everyone. So, Apple's kind of seeing this. According to their employees, this is off the record. They talked to one of their employees who aren't supposed to interact with media. So this is all alleged, or, supposedly this happened. But they said that pretty much that the geniuses at the Apple bar are being monitored and told, you need to take care of a customer in this amount of time, which makes sense from a profitability standpoint. But when you put that kind of pressure on someone to solve a problem, obviously that doesn't always give them the time necessary that they might need to take to solve that problem or to help that customer. Now, there are all sorts of comments below this article where people are saying, hey, I work at Apple and we're told that we can take as much time as we need to, that we can take care of the customer. So, there's obviously going to be two different sides to this story. But if you've gone to an Apple store, you've kind of probably experienced this firsthand. There is a process to go through, and obviously, if you've got more customers coming into the same size store, you've got to get them taken care of as quickly as possible because there are other people waiting. So I guess the answer is, and part of what this article is saying is that Apple is actually expanding the footprint, the size of their store, so that they can get more people inside and they can get more things solved. Now, again, this all relies on the fact that you have a store accessible to you, of course. If you don't, you're going to be doing some traveling. But they also make a statement on here that says that Apple stores produce the most profit per square foot, saying it's somewhere around $5,000. Now, I assume that is per month. It doesn't really state if I read it correctly, but supposedly Apple stores by square foot are one of the most, or if not the most profitable, I guess you would call it, retail formats that we have available in the US right now, which is nuts. So a lot of malls are wanting to get Apple stores in as their anchors. And this is another one that I kind of thought was interesting, is that I am not really a mall person. So there are, a long time ago when I was much younger, I might go to the mall and hang out or go shop at the mall. But right now, especially around Christmas time, getting in and out of parking lots and dealing with people, I'm not really into going through the whole mall experience. So if the Apple store that opens up in your town is in a mall, then if you're not already a mall person, if you need something from Apple, I guess you're going to have to just learn to deal with that. And that's why I kind of am lucky, I guess, that we have a freestanding Apple store not too far from where I live, which makes it easier if I need to deal with that. But as far as the whole mall thing, being in a mall comes with a lot of implications, along the way. But obviously would draw some more people in to do the shopping that mall companies, what's the word for it? There's a name for it, but the mall setup really needs to get people in. Now, speaking of Apple, if you haven't already heard, it seems like every week we have some sort of mass tragedy going on, and I don't really want to get into that. It's terrible, it's unfortunate, and I hate that this is happening, but this is very related to what we deal with, and that is another fight, they say, brewing, according to Business Insider, between Apple and the FBI. Now, my understanding is with this last shooting that we had in Texas, that Apple actually approached the FBI and offered to give them help as far as unlocking this phone. And this is the one where I'm really interested to see what other people think about this topic, because we have this balance of security and privacy. Any way you look at it, it exists, and we have arguments on both sides. One is that we need to catch the bad guys and we need to stop them from doing harm to other people. Obviously, that's a given. I don't think anyone would argue that point. And on the other side, we have people who say that we need to be able to have a certain level of privacy, and there's a lot of misunderstanding as to what privacy means. Now, going back to the Snapchat spectacles and Google Glass and whatever it is that Apple is coming out with next, there's always this this kind of reaction that, hey, I have a right to privacy, and a lot of people take that to mean that they have a right to privacy in public places. And I'm not saying that that is not something we shouldn't kind of have out of courtesy, but if you look at the laws that we have on the books, a public place is just that. It is a public place, so people can take photos. Assuming they have permit or permission, they can fly drones, they can do all sorts of stuff in public, as long as they're not, stepping in outside of any other guidelines or laws that we have. But you can walk down the street and take a picture. You can hang up a camera on the outside of your house or on your car, and you can take pictures of anything in public, because that's just what it is. It's public. And a lot of people don't like that, and I think there's a real misunderstanding as to what privacy means. You have a right to privacy in your home or in any other place where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. So if you go into a public restroom or a dressing room or anything like that, yes, you have a right to privacy. But when it comes to public, as much as we would like people to leave us alone and not take pictures without asking for our permission, we don't really have a right that protects that. So when you're out in public, you're subject to the same laws that anyone else is. And if you don't want to have your picture taken, the advice that was given to me is don't get near the camera. Don't go anywhere where people are photographing stuff. Now, obviously, there are some other laws that come into play there. People can't use your image to generate profit. They can't sell pictures of you or anything like that. But if you're walking around in public and you happen to be in someone's, if you happen to photobomb someone intentionally or not, it's not really their fault, and you don't really have any recourse to say, hey, you're not allowed to take my picture, because you are. You clearly are able to take pictures of whatever you want out in public. So the thing here, though, is that what we really want to do is be able to make sure that we find out where this criminal activity is coming from, that we can protect it, protect against it, that we can have a full investigation and find all of the guilty parties associated with this, and at the same time not compromise the privacy of the average citizen at the same time. And this is the big conundrum here, is that if you remember, back during the San Bernardino case, the FBI wanted, supposedly, Apple to build a backdoor into the iPhone. I think it was an iPhone 5C that they found. And I think that they would probably like, going forward, for every portable device to have some sort of way to circumvent the security that's built into it, whether it's a fingerprint scanner, a passcode, facial recognition, or whatever, to have some sort of backdoor in order to access that information if they've got a warrant or if they're performing an investigation or whatever it may be. The thing is that, most of these manufacturers will tell you, and from what I've seen, this is kind of how it works. If you build a backdoor or a master key or some way to hack into a phone, if that method is not safeguarded, like Fort Knox, which is nearly impossible to do with information, it will leak out, other people will get a hold of it, and when they do, they will be able to get into the same thing that the authorities can. And this is the big concern. If you build that backdoor, it's there, it will be found eventually, it will be exploited, and now we've lost privacy. And if we're trying to keep track of what criminals do, and they're aware of the fact that there's a backdoor into this device, then obviously they're not going to use it, or they're not going to store the information that is desired on that device. So there's real, I don't have a good answer for this, but I have a real question about it. How do we do these two things at the same time? And of course, while this is happening, Apple and everyone else is saying, well, we need to make sure that our customers trust us, that they can put their photos and their information and their text messages and bank accounts and all the stuff on their phones and know that it is in fact private and that no one else can get into it. And after what we saw with the iCloud getting hacked and people finding ways to use Siri to get into the phone, we want to make sure that you don't go buy a phone and know that there's a master key floating around to it out there somewhere. So really, I don't know the answer to this, but Here's an interesting thing on that topic. Hackers say they've broken Face ID a week after the phone release. So, of course, I will put this information down in the bottom there, down the video description. And, they're not really saying how this happened exactly, except that they made a mask, basically, that was able to defeat the Face ID on an iPhone 10 with about $150 worth of materials. Now, do we have to all start panicking and think that people are going to be able to grab a mask and get into our phones? Probably not. And it's highly unlikely that you would be targeted for something like this, breaking into your phone, unless you were someone who had some sort of value, whether it was a government official or a celebrity or someone who was very wealthy maybe, or had, stood to lose something by having that security compromise. So not something I would say we need to panic about, but it is very interesting that shortly after the phone has been released, there is already someone who is claiming that they can get around the Face ID security that's built into the iPhone 10. And I'm still sticking with my passcode. I believe that is going to be probably one of the long-term security measures that people can use to keep their phone locked. And by the way, I meant to mention this on the last article. I almost forgot here. The thing about this FBI investigation was that they're saying in this article that apparently within the first 48 hours, you could have used the criminal's own fingerprint, even though he was deceased. Supposedly, they could have still used his fingerprint to get into the Touch ID on this iPhone. But after 48 hours, apparently that expires. So if you don't use your Touch ID for 48 hours, and I didn't even know this was a thing, but after that time period, it will no longer function and you'll have to manually enter the passcode. And it sounds, unfortunately, like that's what happened this time, is that they waited a little too long, they didn't get in, and now they're still kind of stuck as far as how to get the information off of this phone and figure out what was going on with this crazy person. Although we have a pretty good indication, based on his history. So, the fact that you can get past Face ID with a mask, not a huge surprise, I don't think, especially knowing that there's an adaptive technology built into the iPhone 10 that kind of adjusts to changes that happen in your face. So there's got to be some margin for error there. So if you can make a mask, I think they use like a silicone nose that they kind of carved out to look like someone else. I think my big question is this. If we have these cameras that are getting built into phones that are more and more sophisticated all the time, and eventually we're going to have, we've had 3D cameras in the past, but we've got, dual camera systems that can sense depth on objects and everything. How soon is it going to be before you could just take a picture of someone and use that image to generate this type of mask that would in fact defeat the Face ID security on the iPhone 10? And my guess is not too long. I think we're pretty close to that right now. So, what's the next step? If in fact this becomes a problem, and people realize, or, more than likely that the press, the media makes it a problem. They start talking about it. Everybody panics and says, hey, I need something else. It's more secure than Face ID. Obviously, you can go back to your passcode. But when it comes to, the feature itself is built into the phone, what would be the next alternative? We've done the fingerprint. We've done the Face ID. Maybe you do a combination of the two. Maybe there's a third thing that we haven't even thought of yet that's going to be happening. I don't know, but it's very interesting, and this could be. They could have made this sound a lot easier than it is. Maybe it's quite complicated, and we don't have to worry at all. But I'll be interested to see how this plays out in the long term. As far as the whole Face ID thing goes. Now, iOS 11, we talked about a little while ago. There was a security hole in there, and that was my main concern. Was that people were using this to bypass the iCloud lock. I've talked to some people who said that they were successful with it, and others said that it didn't really work. You have to have the two-factor authentication turn on in order to get past this thing. So the interesting thing is this, and that is that Apple has released 11.1.1. It has fixed some problems, but it does, including the autocorrect I to an A, or the weird symbol thing that was going on. So supposedly that's supposed to fix it, and they're saying that yes, you should in fact install this upgrade, and I'm always the last person to install an upgrade just because what exactly is it going to do? Well, this one is going to fix an issue with the keyboard that I just mentioned, and also apparently fix an issue that they had where Siri would stop working, and that's as much as it really says on here about it. But apparently this will fix that problem, but again, it says nothing about any security updates. In fact, it says that there are no security updates. That's not what this is about. So I would assume that that hole that they have for the iCloud bypass is still going to be there unless somehow this just coincidentally fixes that problem. But at this point in time, it doesn't sound like it does. So we will find out. In any case, let's go to just a couple of questions I had here that I wanted to answer. I'm actually pretty good about keeping up on this stuff. So if you're on my channel or watching a video or anything like that, absolutely post your questions. I try to leave no question unanswered. These are the two that I had from yesterday. And one was, what about using a heat gun to make it easier to open? And I want to talk about this because this is in reference to the HTC One M7, my nightmare phone. And if you talk to any technician, they'll probably agree that this is not usually anyone's favorite phone until you run into that one person who always disagrees with what you say. And you say, oh, it's a really hard phone to work on. And they say, oh no, it's not. It's the easiest phone in the world. Well, okay, here you go. So the back on this phone was very difficult to remove. And short answer to the question, what about using a heat gun to make it easier to open? I would give this advice. You can use a heat gun, but remember to keep the temperature at a reasonable level. Any phone should be okay up to about 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit, because we have hot days just like that. And of course, if you leave your phone in the car in the sun, it's going to get warmer than that, and you might get a warning where the screen shuts off and it takes a little while to come on. But under normal circumstances, no phone should really be damaged at 110, 115 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is, you couldn't use it in the desert, it just wouldn't survive. So you should be safe up to that temperature. Now, there are other parts inside the phone where we have to raise the temperature intentionally higher than that when we're dealing with certain components. But for the most part, when you're dealing with an adhesive, you should, unless you're separating the glass from an AMOLED display, you should, you should never have to go beyond that temperature. So I've seen a video for the HTC One M7 where this guy has a heat gun directly on the phone for an insane amount of time, to the point where he's got to wear gloves, like oven gloves, in order to pick the phone up. That is too hot for your phone. That is too hot for your battery. You are very likely to cause some problems, if not immediately, later down the line by exposing your phone to that type of heat. So you don't need to do that. If you can get it up to the point where it's very warm to the touch, but not hot enough to burn your hand, you should be okay. That said, I haven't seen a lot of difference when I use the heat gun in order to open that phone, so it may or may not help you. For me personally, I didn't see that it did because I use glue. It's not an adhesive, it's an actual glue that's hardened, so by heating it up, it doesn't really compromise the adhesive property of that glue. So you can try it, but keep it within limits. That would be my suggestion. Bubble Buddy, I shattered my iPhone and the camera and flashlight doesn't work anymore. What happened and how do I fix it, please? I think this was in reference to an iPhone 6, but let's see if we can see the rest of the page here. Give me 1 second. Can we move this over here? Yes, we can. Okay, that is when I was working on an iPhone 6 proximity sensor, and that's what this video was all about. And if you said that you shattered your iPhone, and it's an iPhone 6, and the camera and flashlight don't work, then obviously there's something going on with that back camera, and the flash is actually on. The flash is actually on a different cable. So you've got your camera that plugs into the logic board by itself. Gosh, now I want to go grab one, but I'm almost 100% that the flash is built into the flex cable with the microphone and the power button on the iPhone 6. So it's kind of odd, but you could have a problem with the camera that caused the flash to stop working. That's more than likely what happened. So, the easiest thing to do, if you're handy and if you're willing to accept the liability of working on your own phone, will be to open up the screen, get another camera. They're relatively inexpensive, plug it in and see if that makes any difference. And also take a look. It's possible that the camera came unplugged or something else got damaged. I really have to see the damage on the phone in order to give you some better advice. That's pretty much what I would say at this point, is to get a good look on the inside there and see what it looks like. And I have blown through all of this already. So I think that is going to be only 40 minutes today. It got through that quick. Okay, so that's probably going to be just about it for this week. I will be coming back more than likely later on this week in the evening. I'm getting the feeling that a lot of people are at work on Monday afternoon. So for those of you that show up, I really do appreciate it. For anyone who watches it later on, that's awesome. If you're here for the first time, by all means, hit that subscribe button. We do this every week, and I will be adding an additional live stream where we can get people who aren't in the middle of their day at work in the near future. That is my plan. I really appreciate everyone who shows up here. You're awesome, and I'm going to leave the chat open for a few minutes, and then I am going to log off here and get back to work. I've got some cool stuff going on this week. I've actually got, this is interesting. So one, Harvey, I want to say thanks. One of my subscribers sent me a toolkit, which is really cool, and I am going to take this thing apart. And I know you said you don't need me to review it, but this is really interesting. It is a lifetime warranty on the bits in this thing. And I'm a tool fanatic, so I love to check out new tools when they come in, and I have no problem making a short video just to kind of test that out and show everyone what it looks like so they know what they're getting up front before they buy it. No big deal. Also, here's an interesting one, and for anyone who runs a phone repair shop, you know all those emails that you get, and one of these days I'll put a screenshot up here of my email box, because it's every other email is a solicitation by someone who's selling phone parts or phone accessories. Well, I thought, why don't I just start responding and saying, you know what, I'm interested in checking out your parts or your accessories or whatever it is that you have. Why don't you send them over? I'll check them out, and if I like them, I may buy this stuff from you, or I may recommend that other people buy from you. Well, someone has already taken me up on that offer. So I have a bag here from China. Well, that's interesting. Look what that does with the green screen. It's got a transparent image on there. So I have a bag from China with some phone screens in it, and I'm going to take these out and objectively test them on phones, see how they work, and let you know what I think. And if they're great, I will send you to that supplier, and if they're not, I'll let them know that take a look at this video, and if these are terrible, I won't publish it unless they like it. Harvey, I don't know if you're here. I think you jumped off for a second. I wanted to say thanks again for the tools. I'm definitely going to check those out, and I think that it's worth doing a review. I know you said don't worry about the review, but I think it's worth doing a review just to show people what happened to my camera. Just to show people what's in it, and it's not really even a major deal. But I really appreciate that. I had a camera on this other frame somewhere, and it's gone now. Yeah, so I think that was it. I think I've covered everything. That's amazing. I was sitting here saying I didn't have enough time, and I'm 20 minutes ahead of time at the moment. So let's see what else we have before I log off. I don't want to leave anyone hanging. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat, and I will answer those before I take off here. And I'm going to go through my articles real quick and make sure that I didn't leave anything out. And then we will work on getting a panel on here, because I am sold on this idea. I can't tell you how much fun it was to be on a stream where we have other people who can jump in here to Google Hangouts and interact. So I'm really interested also in hearing from people that have their own phone shops or are involved in marketing or tech or reviews, or maybe even just do phone repairs on the side. It would be interesting to have people come on, and you're all invited. Shoot me an email. Anything that we can do that will kind of get information out to the public and other people who are doing this for a living. If we work as a team, I think we will all succeed, and that's really always kind of been my goal within this industry, is to help people. So whether it's a customer or other people in the same business, let's see what we can do to make the world a better place. That would be a good plan, right? Again, thank you all so much for coming on here. I'm going to jump off and start working on my next video. I've actually got a conversion that I think you're going to like, and I should have it done by next week. Some product reviews and toolkits, and what else? Yeah, I think that's it. My head's full because I have so much stuff I need to get on. All right, so have an awesome week, and I will see you next Monday, if not sooner.